Hey everybody, I hope you are well. I wanted to switch it up a bit and do a monologue type video, really thinking out loud, working through some thoughts on a topic that I recently had a discussion with David Gornoski on his show. He has an excellent show. He broadcasts on the radio, on YouTube, on Facebook. It's entitled A Neighbor's Choice. I highly recommend checking it out. I'm going to go ahead and link to it on the bottom of this video, so feel free to check it out. What we discussed a few things, but the title of the show is called The End of Capitalism. And I spent my whole intellectual life critiquing and thinking through the problems of capitalism. Pretty much every book on these shelves here have something to do with a critique of capitalism, which I don't disagree with. There are, countless problems that we can discuss and that have been discussed over the last 50 years. But I wanted to switch it up a bit. I wanted to do a symbolic viewing or a referencing of capitalism through the stories in Genesis symbolically, thinking through some of the ideas there. They're not really well fleshed out yet. I'd love for you to give some feedback or some critique, and I just hope you enjoy them. So if I had any technical prowess, I would have some sort of intro or something like that, but I do not. But I have figured out how to do transitions. So I hope you enjoy. Talk to you soon. All right, so I call this technically Capitalism, Symbolism, and Genesis. It's just some thoughts. So what is the root cause of the problems that beset humanity as it tries to create things, relationships, and society? Is the issue in the isms themselves: capitalism, socialism, communism? I'm going to analyze the issue from a symbolic and biblical perspective, even though filtering any discourse through the Bible has been automatically disqualifying for the last 50 years or so. I too was at best indifferent to biblical interpretations, but mostly ignorantly dismissive. How and what has changed for me is a topic for another video. To narrow things down and to kind of get to the point, I'd like to look at capitalism symbolically through the stories in Genesis. This will give us a context through which we can attempt to answer the questions posed at the beginning of this inquiry. Namely, what is the root cause of the problems besetting humanity's attempts to do civilization? As you can probably predict here, I am going to use Adam and Eve's fall into sin as a framework to identify why human relationships, from familial to communal to civilizational, eventually fail and fail miserably. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He spoke and willed being and consciousness into existence, first in the form of light, and then later in plants, animals, and finally humans. Adam and Eve do not just represent individual people. The Hebrew translation of the word Adam is humanity, and the translation for the word Eve is life. So while we are individuals, yes, we are at the same time manifestations of humanity as a whole and life itself. God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may have dominion over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves along the ground." Growing up first through public education and then at university, it was imprinted on me that all of the world's suffering, from hunger to animal abuse and factory farming to environmental exploitation and so on, are rooted in man. And since God handed humanity over the keys to the castle, and since we are made in God's image and likeness, both man and God are the problem. This actually sounds right, but the main part of the story, the key to the problem and the solution, are somehow always left out. The story of the fall is usually either skipped over as silly superstition or treated like a scary story used to frighten, traumatize, and keep children behaving like good little boys and girls. This is essentially Richard Dawkins' interpretation, along with most of the contemporary intelligentsia in the West. However, there are profound and nuanced insights afforded to those who engage with and really think deeply about what Adam and Eve, and therefore humanity, were to do and be prior to the fall, and what the consequences were for them and us thereafter. God gave man alone free will, which was a gift that allowed us to know and authentically choose love and to share this love with all of creation. I'll let you follow this thread, and if you're interested, look up Father Seraphim Rose, his talks on Adam and Eve on YouTube, and have a few listens. I'd also suggest looking into the Church Fathers, especially St. Maximus the Confessor, and especially for those that want a sophisticated and intellectual exegesis of the fall and its consequences. Now, what does this have to do with capitalism? Well, everything. Capitalism is a form of production, a form of creation rooted in freedom. God's gifted free will that follows the logic of Genesis. Man was made mediator between heaven and earth. We can think of heaven as the abstract ideal realm and earth as the concrete material. For example, in building a house, a neighborhood, or a city, what's needed are both the blueprint, heaven, and the material, earth. This process of mediation and creation is obvious in capitalism. Man applies his mind, his energy, his logos to raw material, and something new and novel is created. Think of a child playing with Legos. First, there's a chaotic pile of colored bricks of different shapes and sizes. Then the child applies his or her humanity in the form of thinking, reasoning, and building. The end result is order from chaos in the form of a plane, a train, an aircraft carrier. The possibilities are endless. The important point here is that human intelligence and work added to material stuff creates value in the form of new and better stuff. The more freedom man has to apply his or her work to innovate in the world, the more novel, useful, and valuable creations come into being. So what's the problem? Why do things go bad, and horribly bad at that? The issue is not capitalism. The issue is the human heart. Corruption, greed, jealousy, covetousness has a way of taking what is good, true, and beautiful and twisting it into death, destruction, and despair. Capitalism does amplify and scale creation rapidly and totally in a way that is definitely problematic when the human beings who operationalize it are unaware of the subtle and dark forces at the center of their being. So what is to be done? How do we individually and collectively defeat this pernicious anchor holding down our human hearts? The answer has been given to us, and I will allow you to reflect on what or who it is. Ultimately, our goal and gift as human beings is to manifest heaven on earth by applying logos, logic, reason, love, and beauty to the things we create, the relationships we cultivate, and the civilizations we build. Thanks for listening.